Welcome to Backyard Cigars. I'm still doing reviews. It's 2036, and I haven't aged, but modern technology has taken care of some of those things. And the year 2036 has been a good one. It really has. It started off very well, and here we are with this illegal cigar. It's illegal for me to have this in my possession. I shouldn't even be doing this video. I may have to delete it after I've finished. I'll leave it up for a little while and then I'll take it down. And I'm taking a big risk, but I'm doing this so that you guys can see that love for the big ring gauge still exists. And I'm not saying I have love for it necessarily, but I'm saying in general, there's a love for it, and it's hard to find and it's rare. It wasn't always that way though. It wasn't always that way. There was a time when this was such a rage, such a rage that it became a mainstay, and it developed beyond a cult following. It developed into something that every cigar maker had to have. The same way every brewer had to have a pumpkin ale. The same way that every distillery had to find a way to come out with a finished bourbon or something different like that. In this case, black market prices are pretty high. They're pretty high, and something like this, I don't know, when we're looking back into time, 10, maybe 15 years ago, something like this would have probably cost 10 bucks, 11, maybe 12, and now on the black market, these are going from anywhere from as low as $350 to as much as $800, depending on the ring gauge and the maker, of course. Now, in my case, I was lucky enough to score one of the most elite, if not the most elite, large ring gauge cigar company that secretly, anonymously drops a small batch every year. And every year they do this in October. And so I'm lucky enough that I'm here on a beautiful October day, 78 degrees, 79 degrees with 55% humidity, and I'm enjoying a lovely day. And I get a call that my bid went through. My bid went through, and I could come to the location to pick up my cigar, which I had paid for already. So I was lucky enough to get to the place and easily access my cigar. It's a very complex system, but the way they set it up, it doesn't fail, and you just go, and you don't have to worry about the cops or anything like that. So you kind of just go back and act as if nothing happened, because this didn't used to be illegal. This didn't used to be something that wasn't allowed. It was a mainstay. It was becoming almost as normal as a Toro. I mean, you had all these different variations of the Vitola sizes: Toro Grande, Skinny Toro, Robusto Gordo, Robusto Grande, Corona Deluxe, Corona Extra. You had all of these. It was, I kid you not, and not because I love boxing, but it's so similar to the way that the alphabets, which is what the organizations that run boxing are called sometimes, decided to add additional weight divisions, weight classes within their rankings. So, and I talked about this before. So now you had a cruiserweight division. It was a cruiserweight division, just a little heavier than a light heavy, a bit heavier, and but not heavy enough to really contend with the heavyweights. So if you fit that, you could go into the cruiserweight division. To this day, still no one cares about the cruiserweight division. But when you talk about other divisions like super welterweight, which is essentially a junior middleweight, you have all of these additional. Okay, now you have more champions. Now you have more fights for titles and so forth. More dues and fees are paid. More money is made, and it also allows different fighters to showcase their talents. So with that weight class, you can exhibit a certain skill that maybe you couldn't at another. And when it comes to cigars, we enjoy cigars sometimes even when they're small, and sometimes we enjoy them even when they're ridiculously large. That is a fact. People may not gravitate. Not this might not be everybody's thing, and not everyone gravitates towards this, but especially the traditionalists. But it developed a following that amongst truckers, large men, just people that love novelty cigars, people that wanted to just smoke a cigar that they could just sit down with, and basically the trucker idea, which Tom Lazuka talked about many years ago. He talked about how it was just a thing that truckers could put in their car, they could smoke it the whole 3-4 hours, and they didn't have to mess with lighting a new cigar, cutting a new cigar. It was a convenience factor, and it was also good tobacco. So, because of all of those reasons, it developed that following, and it became a mainstay. And it's now you don't have that anymore. Now with the tobacco regulations, everything's changed. It's tasting pretty good right now. Smoking well. Going back to how I acquired the cigar, despite the regulations, uh, the regulations, of course, now only permit 5 different Vitola sizes, and they have to be their standard, original, defined size. You can't deviate, and even if you wanted to, uh, you can't go past the 52 ring gauge. This is a 7x70 Nicaraguan Puro by Asylum Cigars, under the Asylum 13 line, and it's a barber pole style Nicaraguan Maduro Habano for one part. The other part is a Nicaraguan Candela, and of course binder Nicaraguan, filler Nicaraguan. Now, what would possess cigar smokers nowadays in 2036 to actually pay $400 to smoke something like this? Well, the rarer it gets and the more the demand goes through the roof, well, so does the price. So it was a rare treat. It was something I just wanted to do. And Tom Lazuka is the best at this. So there's that added appeal of the brand. So we know that, and Tom Lazuka himself, Tom Lazuka being the owner of Asylum 13 Cigars, knows himself that he wasn't the first one to start doing big ring gauges. I've talked about it in other videos how there were always big cigars, and there was always a time period when larger cigars, darker cigars were preferred, but they weren't large in ring gauge. They were big, as in those days it was said big by the length of the cigar. And yeah, you might have had a few that were a little fatter than others. You had the big kind of Gordo Perfecto, which was shorter, could be a ring gauge. Let's just say it could have been a ring gauge of 54. And that would have been a novelty. Whereas over the last 15, 20, 30 years, a 54 ring gauge, we sneeze at that because we're so used to the Robusto at 50, and the Robusto at 50 is small. Tom Lazuka is the man when it comes to large ring gauge cigars. It pretty much went down like this, and I think I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. Christian, I got an idea. I want to do a 7x70 cigar. What do you think? That is the stupidest, dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. It won't work. Let's try it anyway. And the rest is history. Because, as we all know, they went on to even bigger cigars. And Christian Eiroa, of the famous Eiroa family, who is more of a traditionalist, but has still put out some pretty big cigars himself, if not in ring gauge, in length, under the CLE line, I believe. And they make gigantes. But I think a lot of that inspiration may have also come from Tom, because Tom wanted to do something that the traditionalists did not want to do. Even if you looked back in time and you said, oh, there were some pretty large cigars in Cuba, maybe the Guavas, the Almedes, that were 7x58 or something like that. It wasn't a common thing, and they were usually very limited. and it wasn't something people really sought. They weren't seeking this as people are seeking large ring gauge cigars today, and were seeking large ring gauge cigars 20, 30 years ago. It's sweet. Now, I bought this one and I was told that it had 3 years of aging on it, and I thought to myself, okay. Like I have a choice. Very smooth, airy, little floral and sweetness coming from this cigar. It tastes good. That's what I can say to the cigar so far. It's burning well. Good draw. You know, what can be done about the smoking regulations? Well, I mean, things can be done, but eventually you get to a certain point where you feel that you can't reverse certain things. And with this new regulation in place and these new tobacco laws that are hampering the cigar smokers' enjoyment, we find that the limitations that are being placed on the amount of tobacco, the size of the cigar, the type of tobacco that you can use, the seed varieties that you're allowed to use, that it's really stifling the creativity of a lot of the cigar makers. Now, don't get me wrong, the traditional legacy families are just fine. They don't have any issues whatsoever. But for a lot of other cigar makers that were enjoying the success of a larger ring gauge, of funkier sizes, and just playing around with different blends and different tobaccos, now everything is so strictly regulated that even the traditionalists to a certain point are saying to themselves, this is not fun. This is not fun if you have to work like this under these guidelines. And it made me think a lot. It made me think about how it's not even, and it's never been just about the cigars. It's always been about tobacco as a whole, or tobacco products as a whole. And you put warning labels on them, and you know, it gets to a point where you know already what you're doing, and you feel like you have that right to decide for yourself what you want to do. And if you want to smoke a large ring gauge cigar, it shouldn't be legal. And they went after the flavorings and the infusions and things like that. What was next? Barrel aging? Yeah, in 2036, it is illegal to barrel age your tobacco. It is illegal to do so as a manufacturer of tobacco. Even the growing of tobacco is strictly regulated, so that very little tobacco makes it to the black market. So how Tom Lazuka is doing this, I don't know. I know he has contacts. I know he's got friends within a lot of different circles. Honduras, Nicaragua. And this is just a really smooth cigar. It is, to me, so far shaping up to be a lot different than when many years ago I had, I forget what other cigar it was, 7x70, and I think it was by CAO, and it was, you know, those big cigars with the box pressed. I can't remember right now. You see, that's just how they're trying to even erase your memory of these cigars, because you just don't see them enough, and you don't hear or read about them anymore. And so that's what we're left with at this point in time. Are we? A lot of cigar smokers are saying, "Hey, we're just lucky that we can still smoke cigars, and that we can still buy at least some of the most traditional vitola sizes." And even though Cuban cigars are extremely expensive and are still illegal in the United States, you still have, you know, the great Nicaraguan product and the great Honduran product. Now in 2036, Honduras is right there with Nicaragua, neck and neck. Some of the best cigars that are coming out are from Honduras. A lot of it had to do with, stability within the country, but also it's just the cigars kept getting better and better, and now here we are. This is Nicaraguan tobacco, um, really smooth and creamy too. Like, it's creamy. Hint of pepper after the cream. Yeah, really nice. Very, very good start to the cigar. This particular cigar is the Ogre, right? So they call this the Ogre 7x70, and it's a legendary large ring gauge cigar. A lot of people try to acquire this quite often. I think the original series was released back in 2012, something like that, and this particular cigar I think was the fourth issued release. So I'm not exactly sure what year this was released in, but this was quite a sight to look at. Barber pole style 7x70. Everything screamed, look at me twice, look at me three times, buy me. I mean, it just did. Even if I initially didn't want to smoke it, I was still very curious. The construction on it is really nice. They could have been a little cleaner here with the. This is me nitpicking, okay? This is just me nitpicking because I paid $400 for it, so I get to nitpick. But really, you get a good quality construction from it so far, and really good flavor. It's a medium-bodied cigar so far, but I'm anticipating that this is going to pick up in strength. Yeah, it's a good cigar. It's good tobacco in here. As I'm approaching the second half of the cigar, unbelievably, that's where I am. I I feel like this cigar has been really a surprise to me in the sense that I didn't think it was going to be as good as it is, and it really is. I got some grassy notes from the Candela, but they were short-lived, and then I got just some Maduro richness that came with sweetness. It came with creaminess. There was a little bit of cocoa in there as well. Those are familiar traits or familiar tastes that you get from a rich Maduro leaf. But more importantly, I got a really good balance. And I think that that's where the key for me is here, is that the balance behind this cigar is outstanding. And it's well done. It's not, it may have been a gimmick, but not anymore. These cigars are here to stay, and even if we have to purchase them through the black market, we will. Don't know if I'll be doing that again for $400. Mind you, when this was released, I think it was released 2014, 2015. It was like $6, $7 for this cigar. And I remember in 2020, when a viewer named Rory informed me about the cigar and said he would like to know what I thought about it and if I would ever consider reviewing it. And I said, yeah, maybe. And I thought about doing something, back then. And, the pandemic and so forth, things didn't happen. So I'm keeping my promise today that I would review this cigar and tell you about it. It just cost me a lot more to do it. So if I had to go back in a time machine and tell myself and other big ring gauge cigar lovers what they should do for the future, I'd say stock up. I mean, I'm not saying go all Armageddon and apocalyptic and fill a warehouse, but have a few boxes, because the price of this cigar has gone up substantially, to say the least. I mean, you're wondering what regulations, what's the deal, like why the ring? Well, they're saying, when I mean they, the people behind the tobacco anti-smoking movement, are saying that the levels of nicotine in cigars this large over the duration of the smoking time is too high. The amount of tobacco used within the cigar is too high. Or too much tobacco, too much of a prolonged smoke, and then the specific tobaccos used. Because, oh yeah, that's another thing. Only specific tobaccos can be used. Certain tobaccos don't meet the requirement if their nicotine levels are too high. So you'll still get the Nicaraguan, but you won't get the Nicaraguan of 20 years ago. It's just not going to happen because of the strict regulation on the nicotine level. They do samples. It's almost like they're checking the chickens for salmonella. Yeah, they're gonna have it. They're gonna have it, but we're still gonna eat them, and we're still gonna cook them. And some of us will cook them right, some of us won't. But yeah, you get the idea. I went to a wedding over 20 years ago, and the big cigar craze was already in full force. And it was a wedding for a cousin of mine, and he set up in the back. They had like a back porch to the wedding area, or where the party would be. And he had a roller, had you've seen. I mean, a lot of people do this, but they offered only two types of cigars. It was a particular cigar shop out in, I believe, South Philly. I'm not North Philly, and they crafted two cigars. They made a cigar that was infused with I don't know, some kind of buttercream or something. I guess they were aiming that towards the female smokers, and then they were debuting, or they were presenting a cigar similar to this. It looked very similar to this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show it to you. Here it is. Again, I don't know the it says yeah, I really couldn't tell you. This looks like just a special foil that they're using. There's no company name on this. I have it somewhere. I couldn't find it, but basically this is what he had at his wedding, and it's a 6x60, so 7x70, a lot bigger. But here you go again, another look. And here you've got three different types. You've got the Maduro, the Candela, and you've got some Claro. So less Candela. And I enjoyed this. It was a mild Dominican cigars, Dominican tobacco, and I've had this now for 17 years. So that's why I'm allowed. That's why I have it. These you're allowed to keep if you had it. It was made before a certain time. Obviously, it's yours. You don't have to get rid of it. But vintage shops are also allowed to sell large ring gauge cigars, and they have to be made before they passed the regulations, which was, I think, about, I don't know, 2032, 2033, something like that, maybe. Yeah, about 20, but I think it was 2030, 2031. But anyway, the point is that if the cigar was made before that time, a vintage shop can sell it online and so forth, but you can't buy it in the shops. Wow, this cigar is smoking really good. It's still delivering on the cream. It's still getting a little, you get a little bit more pepper, and the cocoa comes and goes, but it's pleasant throughout. The you can tell that it's not a blend that they just put together and said, here you go, big ring gauge. You can tell that it was a blend that they thought about, and Lazuka says he's still making the Ogre the same way he was back when he started. Minor difference, I think, in that the originals may have had a Corojo leaf, and he switched that to a Habano leaf, but that's been the case for many, many years, and every year he drops this, people go crazy. It's always out of stock. It's always hard to find. When you think about Lazuka and his idea for a large ring gauge cigar, a lot of it was based on the fact that as he was traveling the country, he was finding that everywhere he went, large ring gauge cigars were out of stock. It kind of lit a light bulb in his head. Hey, I can fill a niche here. I can really fill, a void by producing and manufacturing a large ring gauge cigar that's not only large, but that actually gives you a pleasurable smoking experience. Because there are a lot of large ring cigars out there, and I've had quite a few, and a lot of them just fall short. They're not necessarily horrible, and they're smokable, and they do offer some enjoyment, but I just think they always kind of fall short of the mark. And with this here, oh man, this is hitting the mark. I have been starting to feel the effects of the nicotine throughout the duration of this cigar. And that just goes with the territory. The anti-smoking people don't want to allow this type of cigar to be sold because they say that the nicotine levels are too high. But that just goes with the territory, as I said. But more importantly, the choice that I'm making here is not about nicotine, okay? It's about enjoying myself with a big cigar because I've got the time or the need or the desire. And man, I can say that this is a really good cigar. Probably the best large ring gauge cigar I've ever smoked. Of this size, at least, of the 70. Cigar smokers are not trying to smoke cigars to get a nicotine fix. It's not about that. Um, it's about the enjoyment of the smoke, how it makes one feel. And perhaps that a scientist might argue that it's the nicotine in the cigar smoke that's relaxing us and calming us down or so forth. You know, science is science. I get it. But there's a psychological aspect to this as well. And there's a time-honored tradition to it as well. It doesn't surprise me that a traditionalist like Christian Iroa would decide to partner up with Tom Lazuka and embark on this crazy journey to fulfill the need for super large cigars. I'm talking 8 by 80, 9 by 90. It's ridiculous. But for me, at this 70 ring gauge, I'm totally in favor of this particular cigar and how it's smoked. Would I do it again for $400? Probably not. I did it to honor my promise to the viewer, even if it took over 15 years to get it done, even if it had to be done despite the regulations and the black market prices. I got it done. So I keep a promise, even if it takes 20 years. But, you look at Ernesto Perez Carillo, another guy who, well, not necessarily legacy, right? But has his roots, Cuban roots and so forth. He might be one of the founding fathers of large ring gauge Vitola cigars, or the founder himself and father of the movement. But Tom Lazuka is the fucking king when it comes to large cigars. That's the only thing I can say to that. Lots of pepper right now, some earth, some cocoa, creaminess dialed back a bit. You get a little bit of that pepper in the finish as well, so it kind of complements everything. It's just very well balanced right now, very well balanced. So one of the breaks that I took, and I'll deduct that small portion of time from the overall smoking time, is I had to go in and get some protein and some sugar, and I made myself a P&J, and I had a couple sips of Coca-Cola with that, and I think that kind of, prepared me for this, final push to smoke this cigar, which initially when I first thought about doing this, I said to myself, this is going to be a big chore. It's going to be 3+ hours of cigar smoking, and, I don't know how good it's going to be, but it's been a wild ride and a really good one. Ladies and gentlemen, as I get to this point in the cigar, I'm starting to get a little bit more leather, more espresso, and I'm not getting what I was getting before in the first and second half of the cigar. Actually, I've got about a half an inch towards nub state, and I'm going to keep smoking this. I'll include anything that I find or discover in the notes. What we saw today was what a lot of people have feared for the longest, and that is regulations imposing upon our free will. But despite that, I found a way to get this done, smoke this cigar. And the Asylum 13 Ogre 7x70 has really been a treat. I can recommend this. I really enjoyed myself with it, and I could see myself doing it again if it wasn't $400. But I just want to thank you all for watching. Till next time on Backyard Cigars. Thank you.